This is episode 11 of the Latter-day Saint Geeks podcast. I'm Spencer, and in this episode, TJ and I discuss 5 of the First Doctor's most notable villains. Welcome to another episode of the Latter-day Saint Geeks podcast. I'm Spencer, and I'm back again with TJ for a fourth and unexpected episode regarding the First Doctor. We thought we were going to just do 3 episodes for each Doctor, but plans changed, and we decided we needed a fourth one to discuss the First Doctor's villains. So here we go.
How about we start with the Geek podcast tradition of recommendations, and you start with yours, which you're stealing mine from the next time, so I'll have to come up with something else.
I mean, you can recommend the same thing as me. You just have different comments about it.
I will.
Because I'm actually I'm recommending Percy Jackson, which is just finishing up its run of its first season. And by the time that this episode releases, all 8 episodes of the first season will be out. But as of right now, I've yet to watch episode 7, as well as I've actually been listening to the audiobook. So I'm kind of been having parallel journeys with 2 different iterations of Percy and his friends. So, and I'm at about that episode 7 Underworld spot on both.
I read it. My son, I read the first book and I've read the second one. I couldn't get into the third one. I want to, and I need to go and try again one of these days here shortly. And my son all of a sudden took off reading at one point, and so he's read all Percy Jackson and I think the next series, and I don't know. So he was really excited when the show came out. So yeah, I mean, but I'll save too many more of my comments for the next time because
we might have to discuss that in a future episode.
I'm pretty sure we will.
All right, what are you recommending?
My recommendation is going a completely different direction, but similar to my recommendation last time. I'm talking about British People and Murders, TV show called Death in Paradise. Death in Paradise has a lot of similarities in Doctor Who, as it has a revolving cast. It starts off with you've got kind of a core 4 where you've got a main detective inspector who is usually a Brit out of their element. And then you've got the island staff. You usually have a detective sergeant who is assisting the detective inspector, and then 2 police officers. The characters and the actors change over time, and it is in its 14th season, I believe, or 13th. I think it's 13th season starting this year. But similar to Doctor Who, for the last few years, they've been doing a Christmas episode. So we just watched the Christmas episode earlier this month because we completely forgot that they would have one, and we were busy and illnesses and whatever. So it was nice to be able to go and watch that.
So Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. It was a late Christmas present for us. So it's a cozy mystery in general. It's not, there's not too much blood or guts. It's not like a CSI or a.
I mean, all my brain caught on to is you said Inspector and Doctor Who, so I started thinking Inspector Space-Time.
Space-Time, yeah.
There's a cosplay I still want to do.
There's a whole different podcast right there with Inspector Space-Time.
Gosh, that'd be good for the next time I watch Community. Anyways, that's not why we're here today. We're not talking about.
We're here to talk about Doctor Who.
So, episode 4 of our first Doctor series, and I said I was going to let go of any control today, so you take the lead.
I'm going to take the wheel. I am not Jesus, but I'm going to take the wheel. So
this is what happens when you have 2 attention deficit people trying to podcast it late at night.
It's later for you. So just a reminder, we've got 3 other Doctor Who episodes here in the podcast. The First Doctor Adventures, which is episode number 2, and then episode number 4, where we went over the companions, and then number 9, where we did just a general review. We are a little out of order because we'll be doing the villains before from here on out, but it's a topic that kind of got lost in the shuffle, and so it's now back, and here we are.
Wibbly bobbly and all that.
Timey-wimey, it's all good.
Yeah. In future Doctors, we're going to do the villains before the Doctor review, but
yeah, it'll go adventures, companions, villains, and then Doctor. But
if you're following us this far, you'll be fine. It's fine.
Yeah, just keep listening. We have we have kind of a term. We have favorite adventures. We have yay, nay, okay, stay, nay, okay for companions. For this, we're going with notable. We defined notable as villains who are kind of worthy of our attention. Spencer's and TJ's. That's who you get to listen to. That's who
you choose to listen to. This is your choice.
That is your choice. We're not forcing you. I'm not gonna.
But we appreciate it.
But I appreciate anybody listening to my rambling about Doctor Who, because I get to talk about Doctor Who with Spencer, which is pretty much what we do normally anyway.
Yeah.
Obviously this is a more subjective than objective thing, but so is our favorite adventures, so it's not much different there.
It's all subjective.
We're going to go ahead and talk about them in order of their appearance. And we decided to limit it to 5. I mean, if we talked about every single villain in every Doctor Who story, we would never go to sleep. So, let's go ahead and start it off. Our first villain.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, I mean, the first villain in Doctor Who really is the Doctor in my mind, but that's the previous podcast.
And then the cavemen.
And the cavemen.
But then after that,
Doctor's fault. After that, you go to Skaro, where we meet the Daleks. Spencer, I'm going to have you go ahead and take back over for a moment. And why do you think... actually, I'll back up a little bit before I pass that on to you. I just want to let everybody know. So my mother-in-law is British. She was born and raised in Ireland. And so Doctor Who was something that they watched when she was a younger tween. Which is when it came out. The Daleks were the scariest thing ever. Like, literally, she's still, a little terrified of the Daleks. And, honestly, if you do not understand what it is you're looking at, and technology back then being what it was, a plunger and a whisk and a giant salt shaker would be pretty scary. So...
And special effects have only made them scarier.
And, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but when you bring back the Daleks and they start to float, that is pretty creepy. So, what is it to you, Spencer, that you think kept the Daleks coming back? Because you only have the one story to start off with, and then they decide to bring them back in.
Yeah, so we got the Daleks when the Doctor, Susan, Ian, and Barbara first encounter them, but then you got the Dalek invasion of Earth, the chase, the Dalek master plan, and then on and on and on into other Doctors and expanding their history to involve spoilers, Davros. If that's a spoiler, then you probably shouldn't be here.
Something from before. Davros was introduced in Doctor Who before I was even born.
Yeah. If you don't know who Davros is, I don't know why you're listening to us.
And people like the soothing sound of our voices. I mean, the Daleks come back. I mean, the Daleks, their initial... I don't remember the first story as well, but I remember Susan screaming at the end of the first Dalek episode when you don't even see the Dalek yet. And
yeah,
looking back at 1963,
was it Susan or was it Barbara? Either way, they were screaming.
There's a screaming. I don't remember, but they're screaming. I mean, the Daleks are truly the first. They are the first recurring villain of Doctor Who.
Maybe that's why they're like came back so many times, is they were the first, like they were the most notable. Like if the Sensorites had come first, then if they were the first alien villain, we might have had more Sensorites. But also the Daleks were just so dark and like there's no until you get to Rusty with the 12th Doctor, there's no goodness in the Daleks. So it's there's very few times that you have such black and white evil.
And I think that, I mean, the Daleks were popular enough that they were trying to figure out how to give them their own spin-off. So, um,
That seems
I think
excessive, but okay.
that
But
that's
then
what
again,
I've
it's
read.
excessive to, we've talked before
The internet
how
can be
just the
wrong.
excessive the Daleks have been anyways. Like, oh, we killed off all the Daleks, but here they are again.
Here they are again. The Doctor kills them and they're come back. I mean, the 11th Doctor, I think, says that pretty well when he first meets them with Amy.
Um, but yeah, they've
So,
been like the most iconic Doctor Who villain ever
mhm,
since the second story of the first season. So
yeah. I
if
mean,
there's
we're
any
talking.
if there's any villain that non Doctor Who fans would recognize as Doctor Who, it would be the Daleks.
Mhm. Yeah, they're. I mean, the Daleks are. There's no way the Doctor can truly ever be rid of the Daleks because they're basically, in a way, to me anyway, the Daleks are the Doctor's Batman to Joker kind of thing. I
Mhm.
mean, as much as Davros comes in much later in this Dalek thing, it's still just Dalek in general. Um,
Yeah.
so, but we can move on from the Daleks because there's so much to talk about. But just to point out, one of the things that makes them not just notable in general, but notable for the Doctor, like you said, they came back 3 more times in stories for the Doctor. Um, they,
Just for the
the
first
Doctor,
Doctor.
the first Doctor. Sorry, thank you. The first Doctor, which is what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
The Dalek invasion of Earth, like you said, which is a future Earth state. I think it's 22nd century,
Yeah.
later 21st century. I
About
can't
100
remember.
years from now.
Yep. And then the chase when they go through a whole lot of different places and times as the Daleks are chasing the TARDIS team.
Mm.
Um, and then you've got the Daleks Master Plan, which is
Mostly
the
gone, but
the
we
mostly gone, but it is the longest story, if I remember correctly, with 12 episodes, all
was
focused
War
on
Games
the
11
Daleks.
episodes then?
War
10?
Games is 10,
Oh, okay.
and that
Because
was
War
the
Games
three.
always seems like the longest, but I actually liked it better this time, but we'll get to that one in the second Doctor episodes.
Well, when I listened to the Daleks Master Plan, I was able to listen to it at 1.2 speed, which, because I didn't, obviously can't watch it, but I listened to it, so I listened to it faster. So it didn't go quite so slow for me. So War Games probably was longer, but
I'll have to try
um,
that next time.
yeah. Um, it was a long story though, and and decent, but they came back a lot. So, but let's go
So,
ahead. We can move on to Nero, to our next notable
so
person, unless you want to talk about the exterminating Daleks.
we'll talk plenty about the exterminating Daleks over the next 12, 13, 14 Doctors,
Yep, which
because
is probably gonna feel like that
I
many
think the
years too.
14th Doctor is the only one that hasn't encountered them thus far,
Unless we, well, only if we,
as far as we know.
when we grab audiobooks for the Eighth Doctor, that's the only way we're gonna get Daleks from him. Because he doesn't
They were
count
in
them in
the
the
intro
movie.
to the movie,
Oh, they were in the intro to the movie.
but
It's been a long time
we
since
got
I
a
watched
while
it.
till we get to the eighth Doctor.
Okay. Yep. Moving on. And we narrowed it down to five, and Nero was one of our was the last one we added to the list as notable. Partially because for a few reasons. One, we couldn't figure out who a fifth really would be that would fit, especially since a lot of the early First Doctor stories did not haven't seen return of a character or villains.
Mhm.
But Nero historically
I mean, he was the
with
first, like,
Doctor.
he was the our favorite of the historical villains.
Yes, by all means, Nero was to me one of the best historical villains, and not even from a villain standpoint, but he was, by all
Enjoyable to
means,
watch.
he was enjoyable to watch. He was entertaining. Um, there was a real historical Roman emperor named Nero who reigned from 54 to 68 AD. Um, he was alive in the Great Fire of Rome, uh, which took place in 64 AD, is during his reign. which is when that episode with the Romans, which is the season 2, story 4. But the thing that when I was reading through it, I was kind of annoyed, not annoyed, but the actor who portrays Nero in the Romans, he was 41 years old at the time, but Nero would have been 26 when he met the Doctor. So, and he definitely didn't look like that guy was 26 with extra age on him. But Nero also, he was a humorous villain, and that's what I think made. I think he's one of the reasons why Doctor Who was able to remain somewhat more popular, because they could see that humor was going to be used here and there. There was a lighter story with Nero and the next villain that we'll get to. It made it a little more fun to watch Doctor Who, not just such a serious storyline at that point.
I mean, when we discussed this episode back in our episode 2 with our favorite First Doctor episodes, I think I made the comment that it just put some Scooby Doo chase music in it, and it fit right in.
Yep. Well, you got that humor of them running through the halls and missing each other as they're trying to find each other, kind of concept. So I don't even think they're trying to find each other. I think they're just randomly going through and trying to.
No, they were completely clueless that the other pair was there until the web planet, when Barbara and Vicky discovered, like, oh, you were at Nero's palace too.
Yep, which is the other reason why Nero to me was notable, is that he gives Barbara a bracelet and it becomes part of the story on a completely different planet. Like the bracelet had some powers, and I can't remember what, because the web planet is one that wasn't my favorite and I forget really quickly about
But
it.
I mean,
So
even just to have that continuity back then is still like even the wardrobe had some continuity.
Yep. Yes, it did. And that's what I mean, I really think that with Nero, it was cool to see a historical figure. And again, with the Doctor and the Great Fire, the 10th Doctor, as we referenced earlier, even references the Great Fire and whether or not he
Not my
inspired Nero.
fault. Nope.
It wasn't his fault, it was Nero's fault. And everything like that. So to us, that's why Nero, I think, was notable. Go ahead and move on to our next notable villain.
So
Okay.
the next villain on our list is the Monk, another renegade Time Lord who may have been the precursor to the Master, who we've both just been introduced to with the Third Doctor, because we're speeding on ahead with. Well, I'm catching up again because TJ was sick and he binged like all of the Third Doctor's first season, but that's neither
Yes,
here or
I
there.
did, and then I've continued on into the Third Doctor second season pretty well, so I'm almost done with that myself.
So
So
I've got to catch up again. But yes,
he's got
the Monk
he's
could be
catching up.
the precursor to the Master. And I mean, we already extensively talked about him in our first Doctor Stories episode, but I mean, I'll let you have a stab at it. Why to you made this one important
Why do
or
I see the
notable?
Monk as notable?
Yeah,
The Monk is notable to me because he's the first Time Lord. Again, that's not even a word or a term you hear until I think
War
it's in War
Games.
Games.
Yeah.
So he's really like the first Time Lord that we see the Doctor interacting with. Um, the Monk also, again, because of the junking protocols of BBC, we don't have the Daleks Master Plan, but the Monk does return for a couple episodes of the Daleks Master Plan. Not regeneration was not something that that they had back then, so was is it possible the Monk died or whatever? But I think that the Monk is someone they could easily bring back. The Time Meddler is a story that you can watch right now on BritBox, so you can at least be introduced to the Monk. Also, the Monk
Also,
continues
side note, all of classic Doctor Who, the first through seventh Doctor, everything that's available on BritBox right now is available for free with commercials on the Tubi TV app.
Yeah, that is correct.
So I don't know if we've mentioned that yet, but that's where I'm currently watching it right now because I don't have BritBox
because
right
you
now.
that's how you are. That's okay. I don't have not complaining. Um, yeah, yeah. Spencer's watching it on Tubi. I'm watching it on BritBox. We are able to do however
Yep.
we're able to do it.
Hey, I'm just glad that there are options to
There
catch
are
Doctor
options
Who.
out there.
But yeah, even in the pseudo canon, the monk does regenerate, so there's no reason that we couldn't.
There's no reason we can't have the monk return.
I mean, and we've talked before. I can't remember if we've mentioned on the podcast, but we've mentioned in our personal conversations, at least, of like, we like we had the master referenced in the 60th anniversary specials
Yep.
as like, okay, oh, the master's coming back again. Oh, the master's dead, but now he's not dead. It's almost worse than the Daleks because it's a
Oh yeah.
single individual. Um, when
Yep.
there are so many other Time Lords that they could pick from.
I think the third season of with David Tennant in the modern Doctor Who and bringing back the Master, it's continued a little too much. I mean, the Master went away for a good few years and then got brought back with Missy, which was a great twist, but also it would have been nice. It's been the 12th and the 13th Doctor both had a Master, and it would be nice to see other non-Master Time Lords.
There's just so many times the master has like been
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah, there. I mean, that's why. Well, side story there, but I kind of feel like the Master would be the more appropriate timeless child than the Doctor, just because of stuff like that.
Yeah,
But either
I can
that's
see
neither
that.
here nor there. So back to the monk idea. The monk being this first character from the Doctor's home planet. The monk has his own TARDIS, and even though the Doctor sabotages it, the monk finds his way out. I mean that, and I think that would be. Now, again, you have the 11th Doctor's quote of monks are not cool, which, obviously he had experience with one, and that is probably why. So I do feel like the monk being the first, though, of his race, travel around another Time Lord, messing with Earth's history, that I think is quite notable.
I mean, just the fact that early on, Doctor Who gave us another member of the Doctor's race,
Yep.
is significant because before that it's the Doctor and Susan. That's it. We know nothing about any other
Yep.
one of her race, their race, or are they human or are they? No, we got the monk. There are more of them out there, which we've seen plenty of over the years.
So now let's go ahead. We'll move on to our next notable one, and became. I feel like the character would have been one of the top notable ones regardless, but even so, the Celestial Toymaker being our next notable one became more notable because of Neil Patrick Harris's recent portrayal of the Celestial Toymaker in The Giggle, which was the last David Tennant episode.
Yeah, the Neil Patrick Harris's take on the Toymaker was certainly different.
It was almost, I mean, it wasn't, but it almost felt like a younger Toymaker, even though he wasn't a younger Toymaker.
And that's part of the thing with the Toymaker is his history is his species is so unknown that it kind of almost seemed like a regeneration, like a Time Lord. But he's also kind of just a shapeshifter or something, but he's also this interdimensional being that is, literal or not. He talked about like playing games against God and everything. So
Yep.
whether that was a metaphor or whether that's, who knows? Like there's so much mystery surrounding this character, and he didn't appear for 60 years, and now we had him back.
And I think, I mean, it goes to Russell T Davies for being a fan of certain things of old school Doctor Who, and I think that's one of the reasons why he brought the Celestial Toymaker back.
It
But
is interesting that they brought him back since most of his original episode is gone.
is gone.
Yeah, the audios obviously still exist because that's what we use to enjoy his story.
Yep.
But there's only one episode still available, like the whole
To be able
TV
to see
episode.
of that whole, yeah, the 4 episode story. Um, I think that with the Celestial Toymaker, though, the other thing that is significant, you have this villain that can defeat the Doctor in that first Doctor episode. He definitely has that capability of defeating the first Doctor. You feel the intelligence behind the Celestial Toymaker, but on top of that, the first Doctor indicates very clearly, and the Toymaker does as well, that they have met before. That is something that um, that David Tennant seemed to indicate more that their first meeting was with the first Doctor and the Toymaker and Dodo and Steven, but
I mean, to me, that
there's
was their first game was
the first
in
game.
the first Doctor era. But
Yeah,
there's to me, I mean, the pseudo canon definitely takes it in a different direction. That
yeah, that's a film
there's
thing.
more before when the Doctor was a
Well, it's
child,
not, but it's
but
not.
it's also their
That's
first. I mean, it opens the door to like,
it
was it
does,
their
but
first meeting
it's
or was it their first game or is it
that
both?
was
Or
not their, but it is very clearly stated in the audio that it is not their first meeting.
Mhm.
So the episode itself of the first Doctor of the Celestial Toymaker, the very first episode of the 4, if you listen to it on the audio, which is still the episode itself,
Yeah, it's still the original audio
it
from the
is the still
episode.
original audio from the episode. So it means that William Hartnell does state very clearly he's met.
It's
He knows
canon.
exactly who the Toymaker is. That to me is canon still. Um, and so they have known each other for a long time, and it would that 60-year gap, which for the Doctor is thousands, millions, billions of years at that point, that gap in between their meeting, I almost think goes to show how dangerous the Toymaker can be to the Doctor. If the Doctor has been able to avoid crossing paths with the Toymaker. But either way, in that initial episode,
I mean,
I
he made enough
really
of an impression on both of us that he that episode, even without being able to actually watch it,
Mhm.
we both had it in our top 5 episodes or top 5
Yeah,
stories for the first Doctor. So I think that says something about the character that even just with the audio, he
yeah,
would have made this list as he made our top 5 stories list or top
yeah.
favorite stories list.
Yep, this is a character who appears that they should be fun, and they are all business and pretty evil with it, with their fun. Um, and I totally buy the Special Toymaker as a very credible threat to the Doctor. Um, Again, not one that has come back a lot, obviously, only coming back that one time recently, but the Doctor has to the Doctor just getting away from the Celestial Toymaker was a challenge for the Doctor
Yeah.
himself.
And we can discuss his appearance in the giggle another time because that's not relevant for today with the first Doctor, but
Nope.
there are so many
But it's
thoughts that I have.
but it felt it feels if you go back and you listen to that first episode again, because I listened to it earlier today in preparation for this, just because I was looking for a few things. The significance in the fear behind the Doctor's voice of who he's about to face, to me, that maintains that notoriety. It's the first time that the
Mhm.
Doctor feels like he's meeting someone he's already met before. Well, it might not be the first time. I can't remember every
Yeah.
story, but before we see his travels with Susan and Barbara and Ian. So somebody that he is threatened by definitely makes
And you
him
get
more
that
notable.
same impression from like when the 14th Doctor is talking to Donna
Yep.
and just how scared he is. Like there's so few times that the Doctor is scared.
Mm-hmm.
And the Toymaker on both encounters, both TV stories that he appears in, both
Yeah.
iterations of the Doctor, even those thousands of thousands, maybe billions of years in between,
Yeah.
still scares the heck out of him.
Yep. That's the thing, is this is the one being that the Doctor has been avoiding in a way.
Yeah.
Uh,
The
so
Daleks don't scare him, the Cybermen don't scare him, the Master doesn't scare him, but
but the
the
Celestial Toymaker
Toymaker,
did,
yeah.
very much so.
Speaking of the Cybermen,
Yeah, speaking of the Cybermen, that is our fifth and final villain for the our notable villains. The
even though they only had
uh,
one story in the first Doctor era,
they are the final story for the first Doctor.
the first regeneration story,
Yeah,
and it's one of
which I
those
still don't.
villains that one of those villains that hasn't stopped coming back.
Nope, they're
So
ones that
one of the
they.
iconic Doctor Who villains,
Yeah, if you've got the
second only
Daleks
to the
as
Daleks.
iconic. As much as I would love to agree with you, I would have to disagree for a different reason, though. But they are notable in the fact that they've returned almost as many times, and in almost one way, I think they've almost returned more than the Daleks.
Yeah, I gotta ask though, who do you think would be the second most iconic?
The Weeping Angels. Everybody knows who a
Um,
Weeping Angel is.
okay.
So many people I know who I've talked to about Doctor Who. Oh, the Weeping Angels. That's the one thing I know about besides the Daleks. And I've know so many people who have never watched Doctor
Okay,
Who.
fair
That
enough.
is what they know. So,
Okay, fair enough.
but that's a 10th Doctor and on story by
Yeah, it's gonna be a
discussion
long
that I
while
will.
before we discuss that one.
Yeah, that's gonna be like 2027 at this point with our
You know
schedules.
what? If we're still doing this in 2027, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's true too. Uh, So the Cybermen, on the other hand, being definitely when it comes to number of appearances and the significance in general with the Doctor, the Cybermen are by all means second to the Daleks in that aspect.
Mhm.
Um, they are, while the Daleks are like just emotionless
Mm,
canisters,
I wouldn't say
Cybermen
emotionless. They're limited to rage is
to
their
hate and
emotion,
rage. That's right. Cybermen are emotionless. Um,
but
being
Daleks
a fan,
hate.
Daleks just hate. That is correct. They have that one emotion. Cybermen are emotionless. They are, for all intents and purposes, like robots that are being controlled.
By pure logic
The
and no emotion whatsoever.
Yep. They in watching some of the early Doctor Who and then watching some of the modern Doctor Who, the Cybermen almost feel like a play on not a play on, a precursor to Star Trek's Borg
Oh,
race.
definitely,
So I
definitely.
mean, it's almost as if that's where they got the idea from. Now, the Cybermen are, they pretty much remove everything but the brain um, concept, but they again are, um, they are these logic, following order soldiers, which you do see that time and time again in their returns. Somebody wants to control the Cybermen because they are a great army for somebody. Like
Mhm.
you see that with in the second Doctor, you see that at least
Couple
twice.
different times, I think. Yeah.
And you see that later on in modern Who, you see that with Missy,
Mhm.
um, with the 12th Doctor. So there's a lot with the Cybermen that makes them a really good army, but also makes them incredibly as a threat because something that is emotionless and won't care what's in its way. They are truly a principal Doctor Who villain that we see time and time again. Um,
Well, and one thing that I think is just chilling about them is that, the ones that we encounter with the first Doctor are from the planet Mondus,
yeah,
but there are many, many. I'd have to like go digging into the depths of TARDIS wiki rabbit
yeah,
holes, but the Cybermen have so many different origins
mhm,
between even just in modern Doctor Who with the parallel world with Pete's world Cybermen. We've got the ones that we just referenced here. We've got all of Missy's Cybermen. Like,
Mhm.
and then there's the other, I think it was a Mondasian colony that where Bill gets converted. Like,
Yep.
there's so many different parallel stories in space that decide to remove their emotions and become Cybermen. Like, what kind of social commentary is this? That
Mhm.
we'd rather become that as humans we value our emotions so little that we'd rather get like take them out of the equation and become Cybermen. Like someone had a clue back, even back in the 60s, and to me it just says, gosh, so many, like, everyone needs a little bit of therapy to be able to accept and deal with their emotions and not just try to delete delete your emotions.
Delete, delete your emotions, delete who you are. Um,
Yeah, there's
yeah. I
the
mean,
whole David Tennant episode with the parallel world
the parallel
just
world,
kind of
yeah, parallel universe.
just it just hits me hard that, like, part of being human is those emotions, and that's part of the beauty of it. And I'm one of the first to complain about, difficult emotions, but it's true. That's part of being human, and that's part of what makes life beautiful is, you know, there's the breadth of human emotions, not just happiness or joy, but I mean,
Yeah, there's
you delete anger and sadness, you delete the joy as well. So
yep, there's no reason to have any, anything if you're just
if you're just there to
mindless robot at that
survive,
point, or truly heartless robot, I guess you would say. Um,
we could have a whole
and
nother
that's
conversation about this is more 12th Doctor, but we got a couple individuals, I can three come to mind that got converted to Cybermen but refused to give up their hearts with Bill
yeah,
and
Danny,
um, Danny and the Torchwood woman that I forgot her name. Um,
right?
but we
You've got
got
enough. They just they
there is a
they
way
would
to
rather have their
become
heart.
overcome a Cyberman, overcome becoming a
Yep.
Cyberman even when they're converted. And I think that also says something about the human spirit.
That I do think. I mean, of course, in this, that is so many discussions down the line.
Oh
Unfortunately,
yes.
I don't want to get too far into that, but these original initial I can't even say it,
The ones
Mondasian
from Mondas.
yes, Cybermen from the planet Mondas. Um, they go in and they were converted from a native into the Cybermen that they became. Um, you've got in this episode, it's the episode that they appear in with the first Doctor. They're almost more notable because they're interacting far more with Ben and Polly than they were with the Doctor, just because
Yeah.
it was time for him to regenerate. And I think that they, coming in and the impression of seeing this dangerous robot that you can't shoot to kill that thing, because
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty much metal. And
But
again, they're
and I also
notable
got the
because of the fact that they come back so many times, especially with the
yeah.
second Doctor.
I just it's such to me it's such a testament to how good they were because like
Hmm.
in the 10th planet they defeat themselves basically from what I recall basically because the doctor was incapacitated, the humans were kind of just holding him off, and then the Cyberman plan just kind of backfires and they destroy themselves.
Yeah.
And but even so, the Cybermen were obviously popular enough that the second Doctor spent a good chunk of time dealing with Cybermen, and over the 60, like almost 60 years that's followed, we've had them back time and again.
Yep. I mean, they do have their own um,
They left an impression.
they left an impression. They were there, they were threatening, and they were able to find a way to um they, similar to the Daleks, they find a way to always survive. Or somebody is stupid
Upgraded.
enough to find
They
a
just
way
have
to
to be
upgrade
upgraded.
into them. Yeah, I definitely think that's a downgrade in my mind. But again, they have their they have their notoriety throughout Doctor Who history, and their initial visit or their initial story comes with the first Doctor, and it's also when the Doctor
The first generation
regenerates.
story.
So
Yep.
it's the the end of the first Doctor's tenure, and so they become even more. I mean, they're not the reason he dies. He just has been ill.
Body wears away.
Body wears away, and he turns into the second Doctor. So it's not them, but they do have their notability because of their placement in Doctor Who history as a recurring villain, as well as the villain that was there when the Doctor regenerates for the first time. So they are our fifth and final first Doctor villain that we're going to be talking about here tonight.
You can bet
Or
that
whenever you're listening to
with the
this.
Daleks and the Cybermen will probably be back on our list for the 2nd Doctor, or at least the Cybermen because he encounters
The
them a few
Cybermen,
times.
he
But
only
even
encounters the
just in
Daleks.
the next episode the next Doctor Who episode we record, I'd be surprised if we don't have at least one Cyberman and or Dalek episode on our top stories. But that's a conversation for next time.
That it absolutely is. Um, that is right. Should I wind this out?
Sounds good.
Send this out, however we want to call it. Well, thank you for listening. If you've listened to this far to our ramblings about the first Doctor's notable villains, again, notable to us. As always, alien abductions are involuntary, but probings are scheduled.
Someday I'll have a catchphrase too. Thanks for listening to the Latter-day Saint Geeks podcast. We're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we don't represent the church in any official capacity. Remember to subscribe to the podcast. You can see our show notes and blog posts on latterdaysaintgeeks.com, and you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Latter-day Saint Geeks. Music was provided courtesy of David Schradel.